All right, what is software architecture? Software architecture is the way in which we design or shape our applications or software solutions. But here's the thing, all software's got architecture, whether you designed it or not. Just because you didn't work with an architect doesn't mean you don't got it. Software designed without intent or on accident, we call that emergent architecture, and it's pretty common in old applications that get new features bolted on year after year. The monolith emerges. Okay, so what's good architecture? I like this quote by Neil Ford. He says, "There are no right or wrong answers in architecture, only trade-offs." That is to say that every kind of architecture style is going to favor one set of architecture qualities or another, even emergent architecture. A good architecture is the kind of architecture that gives you the architecture qualities that are most important to you. But a bad architecture, it might get the job done, but in doing so, it often comes with a whole new set of risks that can set you back with lots of technical debt. Well, fine. What are architecture qualities then? Architecture qualities, or quality attributes, describe the characteristics of the software. For example, some of these might sound familiar. Accessibility, availability, compliance, extensibility, maintainability, performance, portability, reliability, scalability, securability, testability, usability. Sometimes we just call them ilities. And since each architecture decision tends to come with trade-offs, it's important to realize that designing for one set of architecture qualities often comes at the expense of others. Like security at the expense of usability, performance at the expense of maintainability, availability at the expense of consistency, extensibility at the expense of simplicity, cheap at the expense of good and fast. There's no such thing as one size fits all with architecture quality. Well, great. Now, how do we identify those most important architecture qualities? Well, before we can decide on an architecture style that's good, we've got to figure out the most important architecture qualities for the solution. And we do that by talking to stakeholders, customers, product managers, DevOps, developers, testers. You all get a seat at the table. You're going to be concerned with architecture decisions that affect development, deployment, testing, operations, and the user experience. And out of all that, to figure out which of those qualities are most important, we do that by ranking the qualities by risk. That is, risk that the company assumes when we ship software without them. We rank the risk's impact multiplied by likelihood, and we do that with the stakeholders. For example, we've got a good hunch that most of the software we build's got to be secure, reliable, and performant. Now, how do we get software built with architecture quality? Well, it's not enough to identify the most important architecture qualities for an application. We've got to actually translate them into measurable, testable requirements. You might have heard them called NFRs, non-functional requirements, and you've got to treat them like first-class requirements. They've got to get included in the initiatives and epics from the beginning. It's part of what you're building, and so you've got to design your solution to account for them, and they get tested with each release, just like functional requirements. Architecture requirements going in, architecture tests coming out. That's architecture governance. Well, how do we test for software quality? Just like with functional requirements, we've got to test the non-functional requirements. Software shouldn't be considered ready to ship until all the tests pass. And sure, sometimes we take a decision to skip some of the less important tests, but that's risk acceptance. And for non-functional requirements, that's technical debt. Testing for some architecture quality is easier than for others. Some qualities require end-to-end testing or integration testing, and maybe you got to build a test harness, or in some cases, we got to pull in a few customers and do usability testing. Figuring out what kind of tests are best suited for testing the most important architecture qualities is what goes into a test strategy. Architects and developers collaborating with our test engineers to figure that out. And those architecture tests, we like to call them fitness functions. Is our software fit for purpose? Ideally, these tests should be automatable and repeatable and get folded in with our suite of regression tests to be run with each new release. Make sure the architecture quality doesn't slip over time. But what about the drawings? So yeah, architecture diagrams aren't architecture. The diagrams are a way to communicate and enable discussion about the architecture, current state, target state, alternatives considered, and so on. The diagrams help enable architecture decision making. Okay, so finally, what is an architect? An architect is someone who's accountable for the quality of the software. They make informed decisions about how to shape the software in a way that mitigates the biggest quality risks. And while someone might have the job title of architect, in all actuality, architecture is a shared responsibility. And most of you have all helped make architecture decisions, strategic decisions, tactical decisions. My goal is to help enable you to keep doing that with the tools, the disciplines, and the practice.